Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 6/20/2022, and today is the Odin Project Vlog Day 122. And I am 34% complete with the form validation with JavaScript module of the JavaScript section, section. And for this video, I got through the assignments. Um, don't skip those, and then the practice warm-up, and we'll go over that today. That'll be the bulk of the video, and then the next video I'll do will be the project, and then after that we'll do a knowledge check video is my thought process. So the warm-up says go back to your library project that we did a while back and add simple validation to that form. Don't let your users submit without filling in all the fields. It says, don't forget to use your Git workflow skills you learned in the foundations lesson to make a new branch, work on features, and merge it back to main when it's all done. So I had a really cool idea. I was going to do all this live with you guys, the Git workflow process, but in full transparency, I screwed it all up. Jacked it up, got kind of lost in my own command line, and I ended up resurrecting it and making it make sense, but my terminal looked nasty and it was not going to make for a good video on that part, so we're scratching that. But my GitHub is up to date now because I did get it fixed. But so we're going to go through the code, the additions today on the library project. So with all that said, let's hit the editor. So we're going to start out, I actually made a little bit of changes with everything. I moved some buttons around because there was some things that weren't working correct, and I'll show you that here in a moment. But let's start here with the index.html file. So right off the bat, I added a required switch to the title, author, and pages input to help facilitate the Constraint Validation API's extensibility. I guess that's what you call it. But you basically have to have the required in there to help it along, so it can run the checks for the check validity that we'll go through here in a little bit. Yeah, you have to have them in there. Otherwise, in my experience anyway, limited as it is, it doesn't seem to do anything without it. So I put those in required fields as per the text, because the text requirement said you don't want the user to be able to move on without having all the fields input have data. So those are the only ones I require because those are the only ones that are free-flowing text. If you remember, the red is a selector toggle, and so you don't really need to put required on that because it has to be required a toggle. So you only get an option of yes or no. So one thing I did do is I moved the buttons. Now this kind of looks messier in my opinion because Prettier has moved some things around on me, but both these buttons used to be outside of the form, and I won't explain why I did that. I did a thorough explanation of that in one of my previous videos in the library series, so go back and watch my library series if you want more explanation on that. But basically I moved them inside of the form because I needed control. And what I mean by that is my submit button did not have any the correct control it needed to be able to I guess control the flow of the form. So it did great for the JavaScript stuff, but when it comes to the HTML form, if your button, I found out, is outside of the form, which just makes logical sense. If it's outside of the form like mine was, you lose the ability to control the flow of the form. So like your submit, if it's outside of the form, it's not going to actually submit the form. It's going to, it'll render the JavaScript on top of it, but it doesn't really attach it real smoothly to the HTML. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. It'll make more sense when I show it to you here in the browser, but just trust me. So I moved them inside of form, both the submit and the reset, so I had more control. The reset I didn't really have a problem with, but the submit to library button I had a big control issue with, so I had to move that in. And so that's basically the nutshell of that. Nothing else has changed. And then the JavaScript here, everything is the same from the project, except I added a chunk down here, and this is a self-invoking form. What do we call this? Module pattern. This is the module pattern because you see the brackets down here for self-invocation. So I have a constant variable called Constraint Validation API, and it is fired off from an anonymous function. That's what makes it that self-invoking there module. So we have starting off with a const val title, which is just short for validator or validation title, and it takes on document.getElementById title, and we're going to add an event listener to the title, and we're going to do input. So the input here is what is what the API will understand to be the input for your title. So actually, it's going to go over here and it's going to look at the type title, or it's going to look at the ID title and see that it's an input type, and that's what we're looking for. So that's what that does. And then we're going to invoke an anonymous function there, and then we're going to run two methods on val title inside of the event listener. So we're going to fire set custom validity, and it's going to equal a empty string. So basically, this set custom validity, you'll read it in the documentation. It basically gives you the opportunity to write your own error message, if you will, or alert to the user. And then the next one, the check validity, this method invokes the checks, your custom checks and your standard checks for the Tourette's. Excuse me. So the check validity will check for your custom checks and your standard checks through the input. So whatever rules you have set. So in our instance, we have an invalid set that we have an add event listener for invalid. So if the checks come back, if anything comes back as invalid or malformed, or the user didn't put anything in our example, because we use a required switch, we're going to go ahead and run an if here. So if the title.value is equal to blank string, then we're going to set the custom validity to title cannot be blank. So that's what will be presented to the user, and they will be required to enter something in there before they can move on. And it's the same thing for author, the same block of code, except it's val author instead of val title, just a variable name change. And the get element ID is targeting the author input. And the reason I don't have one for the input for pages is because I had it in there actually, and I took it out because I changed the type from text to number for pages. So when you do that on an input, I found out just by Google searching today, is that you don't need to have all these verbose extra checks on it, because it's going to make it be a number. So someone can't type ONE for one and have that go through. It'll error on them. So we're kind of using the API, and we're kind of just relying on the HTML5 standard set to standard rule set to get to our requirements here, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because before I had this basically same setup, but I had a custom validity. It said like pages cannot be or pages have to be a number, but it didn't really make sense. So especially when I started reading about the type. So that's why I have it like that. So enough explanation of that. Let's hit the editor here, or the browser. So here's the refreshed little look. So if you remember from the old library project, I had both the submit to library and reset form, but they looked different. They were smaller buttons side by side, and I just basically rewrote part of the CSS to remove them from what the heck. I'll show you what I basically did. Is I added padding, margin, and I removed them from margin on the top, margin on the bottom, and then added a grid column 1, 3, and added that got these to flow down here because these were inside of the forms grid, and it just was not playing nice. See if I can turn on the grid here. Yeah, there it is. So I moved them down. I spanned them out, moved them down, so that they look nicer. And this also got me back to in line with having the buttons inside the form, but yet still giving it the space so it was equidistant between the add new book button. So it just looks nicer. So anyway, that's the aesthetics part. So let's go over the functionality. So if you hit submit to library, just hit the button. It says title cannot be blank, so that was from our JavaScript, our custom message there. So we'll just put something in there, and then we hit it again. It says author cannot be blank. Again, our JavaScript custom will be called our custom validity message. So it's firing off. So we'll enter 1 in there just for fun, or 11. Submit. It's going to say please enter a number. So this is that pages required, and it's a number for the input, so that so we're going to get a fired off error because it senses that it's blank. And it will also do this if I try to do 2 spelled out. It'll say please enter a number. And so because that did that so sexy, that's why I was like, why do I need to have the JavaScript for this particular one? So I just took that API validation mechanism completely out for pages. So if you can type in whatever, 99, submit to library, and there you go. Do another test, can't be empty. Okay, we know that. Submit to library, up, can't be empty. Okay, put something in there. Pages, can't be blank. Submit to library, up, there has to be a number. And because it has to be a number, that's why it doesn't say it can't be empty or it's blank, because when you set number as your context, it both looks for a number and makes sure that it's not null. So that's why it does that. I'll put this one to no, submit to library, and there you go. And you can just keep going on and on. Reset button still functions, so if I hit this, it'll reset the form, and everything else has remained the same for the library app. So that is it. So keep this one short and sweet. So next time I'll be going into the actual project. Probably we'll see how it goes. I may split this up into chunks. We'll see. My initial idea was just to bang it all out in one shebang and do it in one video, but we'll see. Because it looks different than the other ones, so I don't know how big of a project it is, but we'll see. Just giving you guys some ideas for what I'm thinking for the ahead here. So anyway, thanks for coming along the ride with me tonight. Hope you learned something along the way. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content, and let me know in the comment section how you guys did on this adding feature to our library project. And so with all that said, until next time, see ya.